And practice is a funny word. I used to think of practice as rather boring because I would have to sit at the piano and practice hand exercises for hours. But I'm learning to find the exploration in the repetition, in the returning, that there can be a newness. I like to think a lot about availability. What is available to me in my movement, or what is available to me in a space, especially when it comes to a space. I notice spaces a lot. I notice architecture, I notice texture, design. I'm aware of it in a way that I want to experience it and to notice it. And I do that really with more than my eyes. I do it with touch and fitting myself into spaces and up against surfaces and trying to figure out what I can do with those things and myself. So I'm very interested in investigating what is available to me. And so when I say finding the edge, finding failure, I'm saying it's not even failure in the sense of not achieving. It's more like, what can I do with what is here? And when I explore, if I intend to do something and it doesn't work out, what else can come from it? What else could it be? What actually constitutes my practice? Well, if I were to teach a workshop, I think the main elements that I would be focused on would be getting people into spaces that they weren't thinking of as dance spaces in particular. It would be important to encourage people to explore the space with more than their eyes, to really try other surfaces of the body, and especially to play with whatever they encounter. If it's a texture, if it's a shape, if it's an object, to experience what it feels like and what you can do with it. It's about experimenting with negative space as well as texture. It's about seeing how things can be other than what you think they are. What else could it be besides the thing that we believe it's intended to be? I'm really curious about seeing and re-seeing. Then I like to turn things on their head, literally. Love to go upside down. There's something about being upside down as a way of seeing and re-seeing what's possible. I think I started doing that because it was sort of metaphorical. I'm kind of always playing games like that, actually. Kind of always looking around me and seeing what else I see in the objects and shapes and spaces, to see what I see besides what I'm told they're supposed to be. I don't know. I think it's fun to see things in a way other than what they are. What am I doing besides misusing, quote unquote, misusing materials or objects? Well, I don't think of it as misusing. I just think of it as a way of experiencing, another way of experiencing, another way of knowing. It's like the world is my paper towel tube, and I'm going to use it as a spyglass, and I'm going to use it as a trumpet, and I'm going to use it as a golf club. What else? I'm going to use it as an extra long finger, and I will use it as a conducting baton, and then I will lay it on the floor, and I will treat it like a different kind of soccer ball. So it's just everyday objects to me, spaces, architecture. It's all basically opportunities to play with a cardboard tube. It's something I do all the time. It's this funny futzing about this in my practice. I mean, here we go. So officially, my practice, we call it incidental dances, or accidental dances, as somebody else called it recently. And it's very playful. It's mischievous. I think that's a good point right there. It's mischievous. I see a lot of humor and possibility. I think humor is about seeing possibility, and I think that very much plays into my practice, that because I see so much possibility, I experience a lot of humor. Influences. I read an article by Melinda Buckwalter called Materia Prima, and in that article, she talks at the end about this idea that we have movement influences beyond dance, outside of dance, that count.
And I never thought of those things as counting.
She calls them movement influences. She says, there's so much movement influence in our lives that filter through us and become our dance background. Not just our various teachers, but other movement in our lives, such as sports, social dancing, injuries and rehab, exercises, body work. This was a pretty earth-shattering revelation to me, to my practice, because I don't come from extensive training. I started dance late, and it's something that I struggle with a lot of times, to think of myself as a dancer, because there's not a wealth of formal training. But there is a wealth of movement. It's realizing it's all material. It's all part of what I have to offer. Another valuable lesson I learned was recent. I was reading an article by Victoria Hunter. But this article had me thinking about how I use my practice as a way of beginning. And what I am noticing is that these incidental dances, they do a few things. And these are things that Hunter speaks of. And so reading her article helped me to realize that they are a way of arriving. It allows me to stop and feel, or to start and feel, really, in some ways. You could say some things are stopping, some things are starting. It helps me to notice and participate in my environment, not only with my eyes, but with other senses, with my whole body. So devices of enablement allow me to know what is here, and figuring out through devices of enablement what is possible, essentially knowing my world with my whole being is really how I think of it. This practice, in my mind, it seems to have developed spontaneously for me in the course of my life as a way of experiencing the world. I'm a very process-oriented person. I think of myself as a maker of things. Process over product. It's something I'm sure thousands upon thousands of artists have written about. Susan Lee Foster talks about it in Genealogies of Improvisation, and she speaks about how improvisation is a way of emphasizing process, the process of choreographing, over the product of the choreography. It's something that resonated for me, in that is where this incidental dance process comes in. It is informal. I'm dialoguing with the space. I'm dialoguing with the objects in my space. And I think one of the most important things to me is that I always joke that, I can't dance, but I dance. And when I say that, that goes back to this idea that, well, I don't have extensive technical training. And as much as that may bother me and may continue to bother me, I still realize that I do dance. And I'm discovering what that means for me, and what that means in my body, and what that looks like. And I think I can get hung up on movements, the quality of my movements, the shape of my movements not looking a certain way. And if I focus too much on trying to make them look a certain way, then I feel that I am lost in artifice. I don't want my process to be hung up that way. As much as and I think there's a happy medium. I don't think it's either or. I think there's a way, but when I'm engaging my body with my environment, when all of my senses are directed to that, for lack of a better word, authentic engagement of discovery, I don't think there's any room for artifice. I want to make people think a little bit more, and not so much wow them, but poke them. It's that mischief thing.